Good evening, everybody. It's tea time. Time for a little tea. I have you experiment tea, right? Think one lunch should do it? We got something to talk about tonight, y'all. Something very important. Something extremely important. Everybody, the week is up to a great start. You know, while I'm giving this a second, I know that the second pouring is going to be a little strong. But while I'm sipping on this one, y'all see the topic of tonight, right? The tax on freedom is truth. What? Now, when we think about tax, what do we think about? We think about a cost that is additional. Let me back up a second. I can remember growing up as a preteen, and Pepsi was giving out free coupons under the lid. Like you would open it up and see if you won. And so every now and again, I used to just be real lucky and look, oh my God, you got a free soda. And I would go to the store. Now at 14, you have no money. You have no income. There's nothing coming in. So free to a 14-year-old needs to be free. Free to a 14-year-old means absolutely no cost. It's free. So at 14, I would go in. I could never understand. Now, there was a difference between when I was 14 and when I was 17. By the time I was 17, I was working in retail. But my 14-year-old self could not understand why I got to pay 5 cents. Like the person would always think, because the soda was what, 99 cents at that time? I might be dating myself. I'm older than 18. But if a soda was 99 cents, then of course your tax on that was like 4 cents, 5 cents, whatever. But I remember always having to give a nickel. I would always have to scurry around for this nickel, but I would always protest and say, no, this says free. Well, yes, the soda itself was free. It was completely free. It didn't cost anything. However, there was a tax levied on that soda by the sovereign. So the state said, we want some of that. So yeah, you can give the soda away however much you want, but we want the tax on that sale. And so as I began, the Lord had taken me through a journey over the last few days since last week, and he had to show me that freedom, while it is free, it does not come without us giving up something. Let me sip on my tea. Mhm. Freedom, though it has no cost, you cannot obtain it without giving up something. So if it's no cost and I can't have it unless I give up something, then what is it? Like it sounds like something with some kind of a value. Like you don't want me to necessarily pay for it per se. However, you do want a transaction to occur before I can achieve this thing called freedom. I'm interested and I got questions. What is it and why do I have to engage in a transaction? Why must I transact for it if it's free? Give it here. Because see, now my 14-year-old self is kicking in and I'm like, it's free. And if it's free, I want it. So let's just kind of go into some definitions so that we can understand this question. Let's first talk about value. What is value? And how is value determined? Very simple. Value is determined by supply and demand. The more of something that you have, the more value society and people place on that thing. We see that on the micro level when it comes to presence, people's time. The pastor of a lot of churches or the bishop, right, is not really going to be there maybe every night during the week for every auxiliary that's going on. The pastor is going to be there during times when the pastor needs to be there, the bishop and otherwise are the leaders. Even in our workplace, the CEO is not going to be somebody that you see on a common basis. So whenever you see these people, you make yourself available. If there's a mentor that you really like and you know I can learn from this person has something to pour into me. When that person says I am now available, what happens? You typically do a little extra to make sure that you can match your availability with that person's because their time is usually scarce. Usually don't have enough time to get with this person. So now that places that person's time at a higher value. So value is just pure supply and demand. Let's talk about our health. Because you know over here at Royalty with the King, we are trying to get as close to Eden as possible. We're trying to get as close to the design or the management of this design. God's intended management for this body. And his intended design for this body is that we use plants and herbs for our meat. That's what the word says. Tells us that's why he gave us plants and herbs. So it can be meat for this temple. So I always advocate, hey, we're not trying to be vegans and vegetarians, but pull away from the meat. Pick one meal a day that you can go meatless, or pick one day out of a week you can go meatless. And let's get as close to the architect's idea of what this body requires in order for it to operate. This body is made up of certain things, and it requires what it is made of in order for it to regenerate itself and in order for it to maintain, first of all, achieve a state of holism or holistic life living. And then once you achieve it, then we have to sustain it. We're not going to sustain it drinking sodas at every meal. And yes, I'm picking on sodas. Because today, I added it up. Today marks the 43rd day that I ain't had a soda. I got to put a pig down for that. 43 days. Now, our health. As long as we think our health is in great abundance, as long as we think things are going good with our health, what do? We tend to start taking it for granted. We tend to start slipping up and just doing whatever. But no, I'm just gonna eat a little bit of that. Just give me a taste. I shouldn't have it. But go ahead and we make allowances. because we view our health in a position of being in great abundance. So subconsciously, we are devaluing our health. We're devaluing our health. Well, I only have a cigar on special occasions. Not saying there's anything wrong with the cigar. I'm just saying let's watch that subconscious devaluing of our own health because we feel good today and we look good today and our physical came back all right. And now we just want to go ahead and have a good time. It's not responsible. The time for that dumb stuff was in our 20s, maybe in our early 30s. But I'm only 25, so what am I talking about? I've got plenty of time. It's time to get serious about our health. Because when it starts declining, when it starts getting scarce, when we start losing the grip on it, then now we want to start doing right. Now we want to start eating rabbit food, doing all of this other stuff, when all we had to do was do right along the way. I'm not saying don't ever have a soda. Have it in moderation. I was drinking it every day at every meal. That was a problem for me. And I'm advocating you find out what that problem is for you. Where are your bad eating habits? And I'm saying let's clean them up now and begin acquiring a taste for the things that are going to sustain this life. Because we got stuff to do. There's something that's firing off on the inside of us. Desire is firing off. That creative energy is firing off. And if we don't take care of this temple, we got to get out. It wasn't really for us anyway. We're just the stewards of it. And we get benefits for stewarding this temple for the Holy Ghost. But if you don't take care of his house, you got to get out. I ain't trying to leave until it's time. It is appointed unto man to die once. I don't want to leave before my appointment. And that's why we have Royalty with the King every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. This is spearmint. This is good. I got one lump of sugar. I think that's right. Now, y'all get that? So what is freedom? We know what value is, supply and demand. So now freedom is the power or the right to act, to speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. All I heard was freedom is power. What is that? Something is shaking. My neighbor was doing work. I hope y'all can still hear me. But yes, freedom, the power to, or the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Now, I took this definition and took it inside of myself, and I said, Michael, what is freedom? And I said, oh, wait a minute, hold up. Let me tell you what freedom is. Freedom is boundless. Freedom has no barriers. Freedom has no limitations. No resistance. It just is. Is what? It is the manifestation of authentic, untamed, God-given power. Is what freedom is. Boundless, limitless, untamed, God-given power. And because it is untamed, it needs to be harnessed. It needs to be controlled. And not only that, it's not a cost to receive it, but because of its might. Okay, because of its unlimited potency, you have to withdraw from the source. You can't just get it all at one time. See, all of us, every soul that is dispatched into this realm has the capacity and the authority and the right to present itself before freedom. It has the authentic right to present itself to withdraw on that power. But you can only withdraw on it to the degree that you have bandwidth or capacity. I remember my aunt was telling us, she used to work in daycare, my aunt Teresa. God bless her. And she was telling us how one time during Halloween, this one parent brought this big old thing of candy and just set it in the middle of the table and told all the kids, which could have been no more than three, so all of them, you can have as much of this candy that you want that can fit in the palm of your hand. And so now here you have these kids, oh my God. And so they look at this in their world, this endless source of candy. And then the moment of reality hits when they look at these little hands, but they still go in and they get what their little hands can hold. And then you still see that carnal nature that they're torn. Like, I want more capacity. All of this candy, I know at some point what I have is going to run out. I'm looking at the potential and I want more. And that is what Jesus Christ died for, is to give us capacity, to make a way for us to present ourselves before this power source and be able to withdraw on it on an unlimited basis. But a lot of times we lack capacity. We have enough capacity to manifest getting our certifications. We have enough capacity to make sure we get in and out of certain jobs and certain social environments and certain circles, and that's on our own strength. And we do all of that on our own strength with the measure of freedom that we have access to. Because freedom ain't nothing but power. Why is freedom power? Why did God make it like that? Getting excited. Okay, before I go any further, let me tell you why freedom is power. Whenever we encounter people that can think outside of the box or that can think freely, what are some things that we can say about people like that? What are some adjectives that we can assign to people that just think outside the box? They're uninhibited, they're nonconformist. What do we tend to notice about them? They tend to be people that are extraordinary in some capacity, whether it be something that we can measure, whether it be their life, the kinds of people they can manifest, because some people are just rich in resources. Like every time you turn around, I remember a lady, her name was Miss Pope. Grew up with her. She knew all of the politicians. She knew all of the power and all the authority. And, she was a regular middle class person. But she was rich in her reach and in resources. And then and she was extraordinary and she was dynamic. Then there are people that you can look at their life and it presents as opulent. And it's like, oh, wow. And let me tell you how that happens. Everything is vibration. Everything that moves, everything that has a frequency shows up in this physical realm as that. So the fact that I can look at a flower and call it a flower in the physical realm, that flower physically arose, how it's constructed, has a spiritual vibration that matches it. Where am I going with that? Because we are a multi-dimensional being. Everything with us starts in the mind, in the imagination. And our mind is broken down between the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind is the part of us that just receives everything. It just brings in everything. That's where our education gets downloaded. That's where our intellect gets downloaded. That's where our cultural, political, all of this, all these norms, that stuff goes in as information. But then in the background, although we're receiving that information, we are watching other people's reaction to the information. And we are building and forming opinions about that. So, for example, let's go all the way back to a child. I remember going to work with my grandmother, let me back up even a step before that. When I was in kindergarten, I remember our librarian had this little mouse. I forgot his name, but I loved that little mouse. And he would come out and read to us, come out, hey, boys and girls, all of that. I've never seen a mouse outside of that one in my entire life up until that point. I was probably 3 years old. That was the only mouse I knew. By the time I went to work with my grandmother, I saw a mouse. I was like, what are you doing here? And I picked him up. It was all rigor mortis and hard. And I put him to, and I'm just playing with him and all of that. And so I'm over there playing with this dead mouse, thinking it was the mouse because I have formed a positive opinion about a mouse. Because the librarian, who is a trusted adult, is always got a smile on her face. She's always with her book. So my opinion or my paradigm around a mouse was positive, non-threatening, welcoming. And I welcomed it. Then I had a paradigm shift. Because when my grandmother saw me over there so occupied, she's like, sweetheart, what you doing? And all I remember is her grabbing me, popping my hand, not because I had done something bad, well, something nasty. But I knew it wasn't a pop of, I'm going to get you. But for whatever reason, I was just laughing. I was like, what are you doing, miss? And she yoked me up and grabbed me and took me to the bathroom and scrubbed my hands and my arms down. It took me, because she never explained to me why, it took me to just kind of grow up and go through paradigms to go back to that instant to say, that was a dead mouse. Because since then, my paradigm has caught up to my grandmother's. I don't like the critters, can't stand them. I have very negative opinions around mice. Nothing welcoming about them at all. So that conscious part of our mind is the part that brings in everything that we reason. But we never really know what's building the paradigm until we are introduced to contrast. And I had contrast. I had the librarian's view of a mouse, and I had my grandmother's. And in that contrast, I saw more people react like my grandmother, so I took on that paradigm. We do the same thing. That's why you can take a rocket scientist with all that education and he still have a 400 credit score. That's how you can take a world-renowned doctor, attorney, teacher, educator. You can take some of the most brilliant minds that society has to offer and you find that they have relationship failure. They're obese. They're doing things that are counterproductive for their life. Why? Because the conscious mind is winning. The conscious mind with your obese self, and I'm not picking on nobody. I'm making a point. You can get up there and you can deliver. But then you got to get back on your medication and your oxygen and your medical aid. That's a problem. That part of that person's existence is driven by the paradigm. What is it that makes you run to food like that? Because it's out of proportion. You have a 400 credit score and you're an engineer. You know numbers. What is that? What did you go home to that shape, that paradigm that you're operating in? Now I had to go all that way so I can tell you why freedom is power. Because when you free your mind from toxic paradigms, you can soar to an unlimited height in your life. It's the old paradigms that are keeping us bound. Money don't grow on trees. And so I don't know what that means yet in my conscious mind. Oh, but the subconscious is just full. And it's recording everything. And it's receiving everything. And so if we want real freedom, okay, so now we're being introduced to contrast. And so sometimes contrast comes in the form of the us that we cannot be to get to the next level. And that might mean, okay, I am, and it's just never enough time. Okay, let me make this point. Here I am, I'm a carpenter. And I love making things out of wood as a carpenter. And I've been doing this for 15 years in my own little corner of earth. That's it. I don't need to travel. I've convinced myself that I'm content. And then another carpenter comes to town because I sure wasn't going nowhere because my paradigm is around parents and family that says, stay close to home. Don't you go out there. You stay safe. Okay, so my paradigm, I'm comfortable in my paradigm. Don't even know I'm bound. Don't even know I'm a prisoner to my own environment. But then somebody who is uninhibited, who's a carpenter like me, they're teaching it. Now I have this contrast. I see what's possible with my gift. And I'm like, I'm looking at how people are reacting and responding. And now I'm flirting with being jealous. I'm like, what is this feeling I'm having? You are being confronted with yourself, a different self whom you have not met up until that point and moment of contrast. And so, what life is saying is, I am showing you desire. I'm showing you what has been implanted in you that the paradigm has you prisoner to. I'm giving you something to believe in beyond where you currently are. I'm giving you information and I'm offering you more power, i.e., more freedom. So now we've conquered the whole, I'm not going to be jealous. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to celebrate, my brother. I'm going to celebrate my sister for doing good. But meanwhile, now we're mad. We're just mad. And we don't know why we're mad, but now we're mad with the us that is afraid to do that. And then some people stay in that state for years without being able to language it and get themselves out of it. That's why Jesus came and said, you know what? All of this idea that you need to work in order to get into the presence of God, you have to sacrifice. You got to bring turtle doves. You got to cut a goat up. You got to do all of this stuff just to get into God's favor. Jesus came and said, no, free yourself. I guess I should read the scripture. Okay, let me get the Bible. Since this Bible class, let's go to Galatians chapter 5, and we're going to close, and we are going to definitely pick up next Wednesday. Child, that wasn't nothing but the intro. Okay, but I just love this topic. I love talking about destiny. I love talking about unlocking our power. Because the enemy doesn't like to talk about this. That's why he fights us so hard. He didn't want us to be great, but forget him. Ain't got time for him. I have power over him. Bye. Play with me if you want. Bye. I will cast you to hell. We have the power to do that. And that's the last thing they want. Because we see in Matthew, when they saw the apostles, when they saw Jesus, they said, oh my Lord, just put the throw us in the pigs. Please don't send us to hell. So that tells me that that's why they are afraid, and that's why they want to keep your paradigm making us bound by it. They don't want you to wake up and know that you are a joint heir with the authentic source of power. And that's why it is power, because the power comes in our oneness. When we become one with the identity that God already predestined for us, when we become one with His Spirit, one with His requirement for us, when we become one with the Son, when we become one with the Godhead, and we're walking and we're striving, then now we have access to more freedom. Because what that oneness does is it liberates us and it makes us free in Jesus. But here's the tax. The tax is truth. What's the truth? The truth is you're scared to be great. And the reason why it's a tax is because tax is always inconvenient. It's the inconvenient extra of a thing. That's my definition of tax. The inconvenient extra of a thing. But in this case, the tax that we pay for our freedom is truth. But the thing is, when we pay any tax, we still get the totality of the benefit. So we have to be confronted with ourselves, the truth of who we are. The more and more we seek after truth, and sometimes it hurts. That extra tax does not feel pleasant. But every time we do it, I want to buy something more. I want to buy a bigger house. Guess what? The property taxes are going to be more because the house is bigger. but I get to enjoy this big house. Okay, I want to be that person that travels and speaks. Okay, I gotta accept the truth of me being scared. Galatians 5 and 13. This is Paul. And Paul basically in this chapter is saying to everyone, freedom in Jesus is the only truth that you need. When we know that Jesus came to set the captives free, to unlock our mind, he said, repent, rethink. Because when you rethink, now you can reassess. And when you reassess, you say, actually, I'm rethinking that because my parents have grown in a certain economic stratosphere, I have to stay there. Because my whole family has been in this particular field or whatever, I get to rethink and rewrite my life myself. That's the truth. Provided for us by the blood sacrifice of Jesus Christ. For brethren, ye have been called unto liberty. Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. For all the law is sinful. I'm sorry, for all the law is fulfilled in one word. Even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Okay, in this particular passage, for brethren, ye have been called unto liberty. You've been called unto freedom. Now, here's the thing. He's saying this is not a freedom, and this is what the enemy in the kingdom of darkness wants you to believe. You only live once, do you? He's saying, do not use your freedom as an occasion to sin. That's not the freedom I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the freedom to say I can do what I want. I'm talking about the freedom that says I can approach the ultimate power source without sacrificing and shedding blood. The only blood that needed to be shed in this dispensation was the blood of an innocent lamb. Because that blood has been shed, I can approach the true, authentic power source. And when I do that, because the word of God is quick and and sharper than a two-edged sword, as I'm approaching him, the truth of his word is going to cut off whatever ain't like him. It's like, oh, and now I have no choice but to conform to his word and his will. And when I do that over time, I will show up as the version of me that he already predestined. We out of time. I've got more on this subject, but we will reconvene next Wednesday for more Royalty with the King. Be blessed.